Hello, hello, hello. I am doing a follow-up video from yesterday because I wanted to talk about the story of Abraham as well. That is in the Bible. Because that is another example of the Bible being a tool to the Kabal. A tool of the Kabal used on the public. And a lot of you know this very well known story of Abraham. What Abraham did to his own son. So think about this for a moment. Think about this very, very, very close up and dive right into this, into the causality. Why was that written? That's another story that was written. That's not true. That was written as an example to the public and I'll let you figure this out. I'm not gonna tell you right now why we did this. I want you to figure that out for yourself. What is going on now? What is happening? Is there something going on? Is there a rat outside? Huh? Is there a rat outside? Is there a rat outside? Yes, there's a rat outside, and when I say rat, then the eyeball goes like this. Thinking rats? That could be a rat, yeah. There could be a lot of rats. Wait, I have to cover him. He has to always be covered. This is very, very vitally important. Okay. So, anyway, yeah. So, the story of Abraham, it goes like this. Abraham has a little boy, a little child, and suddenly this mysterious voice says to him, and this is a made-up story, I know for sure, this was written long time ago, over 1,000 years ago, I'm sure. This was written to brainwash, and here I'm already explaining this now. I should not have explained it, but I want you to figure out what they were trying to do with the story. This mysterious voice, again, like with the story of Ham, which was also, this was also made up. Okay, it's obvious. Some stories are true and some are made up, so it's all jumbled up. That makes it extra confusing to the public. Some stories are good-hearted, and some have a good message, right? And then there are others that come in the back door with so-called the good old manuscript, that was written by many different people over the course of history. Right? Usually people the people that had that were in charge of this, of the the entire editing and publishing of this manuscript called the Bible, this entire book that holds many different stories, and they're not even cohesive, and it's all chaos and contradictory, and you name it, and evil. Okay, there are evil things in it, and this is particularly evil. The story of Abraham. That's why I don't understand why Esther Hicks took that name Abraham for her channeling entity. So because I don't see anything particularly good with that. And then she says it has nothing to do with Abraham from the Bible. Of course it does, obviously.
So, and that's another brainwashing, what Esther Hicks is doing. So that's obvious now. It's obvious to me now. It took me a long time because I wanted to believe it, because some things are very, very good about Abraham. What Abraham said, very true. But then they bring in the mind control through the back door. So you can't do this unless they meet people where they are, and they meet people where they want to be, and they meet people where people wish to be, and what people desire. They take people's fears and desires, and then they bring in the solution, or the terror and the warning, or the extortion. Okay, that's how it works. So think about this for a moment. The story of Abraham has a little boy, and suddenly this inner voice, the voice of the God, which God? Elite or Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever these names that have been mentioned are, those are ETs. And they are not gods. They are self-proclaimed, self-coronated God. Not all ETs that came here to Earth were very people beneficial minded. Okay, they were not necessarily here for all of the beings. They weren't self-sacrificial. They weren't giving their all as the good Samaritans are. Okay? No, there were some that were not so. They were advanced technologically and they knew a lot, but not all of them were very benevolent. Okay, there were some that were very selfish and that wanted to be rulers. Okay, such as Elite, Yahweh, Jehovah, Enlil, whatever, Beelzebub. That's why Beelzebub in Germany, or Yaldabaoth or whatever, that's where Beelzebub comes from. That's just another pronunciation. They equated that with devil. So because some were very, very, very selfish and mean and dictatorial. Okay, so tyrannical dictators. That's what they wanted to be, and they thought they could because they were smarter than everyone else, and they were not benevolent. Okay, there are some smart people that are smarter than anyone else that are good, but that's extremely rare when that happens, and that happened this time in history today. Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and Robert Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard. Those are extremely smart people, and they're also very benevolent, good, kind-hearted, giving. Okay, that's very rare, and it's a wonder, it's a miracle that they're all there suddenly to help us during these pivotal moments in history where the Kabal and the corporate agenda have taken it too far. Okay, and then when they take it too far, that's when the public finally gets it. That's when the public... Things always have to get really bad before people can finally recognize what's going on. Okay. So, but when the ETs came, the beings that were there, our prehistoric ancestors, the ape humans, they just were in awe with those ETs. They to them they're heaven sent. They are gods. They're angels. They are something they must worship because they're just so much more advanced. They know so much more. They're in charge of everything. They take care of this or that. They can perform miracles. So of course they worshipped them, and they did anything they wanted them to do. And then so if the ETs are if they're very selfish, they take advantage of that, obviously. So they did all kinds of things with the people. The Garden Eden Project, as I mentioned last night, they did gene splicing because they wanted them to be smarter. They wanted them to perform better in this or that task. They also wanted them to be very strong at the same time. They did all kinds of things to make them strong, and then so I heard that a bunch of giants came out of this, that they were very extra supersized, and they were intellectually strong but not as strong as the ETs. So the gods from the heavens they always had this cutting edge over the others. And then I grew up and hearing about these things, and people take that as no one I knew ever said, well, who are these gods? Well, my dad would say, those are all fabricated stories, of course. Or anyone in my family would say, oh, that's fabricated stories. I only have one Christian in my family, my mother's sister, my aunt. And I don't even think that she thinks very much at all about these stories or questions or thinks about it. That's not on her mind. Okay? That's for her, I think it's more like a communion type of situation where they get together, they eat together, they have their Sunday prayer, and they don't think very much about the history that is being mentioned in the Bible, and I wonder if they take that even at all seriously. But there are a lot of people here in the United States that take that as like, these are gods, and that is that God, the God of the whole world, Enlil or whatever, or Jehovah, right? Those are ETs. Those are just one individual here and there that tries to be a god over everyone else. That is not the God of everything indefinitely, right? And there's no such thing as everything, because everything, this concept of everything doesn't exist, because things are infinite, and this infinity, that's the ultimative, that's the ultimate, if you want to call it creator, right? That is the ultimate creator, the infinite cosmos. Okay. But so many people didn't understand that. I've met so many people that just can't wrap their heads around it. They think there is this puppeteer, humanoid, giant, big granddaddy that is orchestrating everything. And it's not a humanoid, it's formless, okay? It can take on any form. It can take on the form of a dog, or Jiddu Krishnamurti, or Gautama Buddha. It can also be several forms at the same time, with the pure soul of the infinite cosmos. Okay? So it can go into different forms. But the infinite cosmos, the mind, this what I would call mind, is an indefinite phenomenon. It is everything and all into eternity. It is in all of us, but we are not necessarily the pure soul. So we have our own soul, and most souls are beginner souls. But we're all like part of this. Of course, the infinite cosmos is the owner of us, basically, right? It is. We are filaments of it, and we have different souls that are on the healing, that are on the growing and learning journey. We are experiencing the world through this vessel that we take on. If we're not in a vessel, if we're not in some kind of existence vessel, it could be any kind of vessel. If we're not in an existence vessel, then then everything is total equanimity, and we're not learning and growing. So if we're just floating out in space to recover, then that is the recovery phase, and we're not in a learning momentum as we are in a body, particularly here on Earth. This is particularly heavy. Okay, this is particularly brutal here on Earth. That's obvious. So it takes a lot of guts for a soul to decide, let me be born in a physical, biological existence here on this planet. That's pretty hefty. So I obviously don't remember having said that, but then again, we don't remember what we set out to do as the raw soul in outer space. Okay, so we come here, and here we go from there. We start from there, and we bring our past lifetimes in it as well. So that's maybe because we don't make certain mistakes again. And to other people it appears like, oh, I wonder how you knew this instinctively. Well, I've already learned my lesson in my past lifetimes in that regard. So, but then some people make different mistakes again and again, and until they learn it, until they see the whole picture of it. So once we, as Jiddu Krishnamurti said, once we see the whole picture of it, then there's no way we're going to do this same mistake again. And there's also no choice, because our mind sees the vital importance of creating peace on Earth instead of fighting with people or doing all of this power struggle that people are doing with each other. So those were ETs, and it's pretty obvious. And we are surrounded with life. We're surrounded with extraterrestrials in outer space, and maybe some of them are already here, and we just don't recognize them because they look very similar to us. And we humans have quite a wide variety of different faces and different brain sizes and different body sizes. So an ET that is a bit outside of that range would not be so noticeable. An ET that still looks very, very much like a person, like a human. And most of them do. They do. Some of them are intermixed, and others, as I said before, have evolved in the same exact way. There are different reasons for it. That also has to do with quantum entanglement, and it has to do with non-locality and bilocation, and that has to do with synchronicity. So I'm making video, but I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you.
What are you doing?
I'm making video, but I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you. Not showing you. I am not showing you. I am seriously not showing you. Okay? I'm showing at the baby dog now. So, not showing you. So, okay. So there are many things that play into it, that have everything that has to do with quantum entanglement, and with the ether, and with morphogenetic
This is
fields.
gonna be a long time.
So,
I have to get right.
yeah, no, I'm not showing you. I'm literally showing my artwork here now. Okay, so not showing you. Okay, I can still talk and make the video. So, this is very important. This is on my mind, and I wanted to share this with people. I think this is very, very important that people begin to understand this and begin to dive deeper into this matter of who are those gods, okay? Who were those beings? Where did they come from? Ask more questions. They, of course, in turn, tell you to not ask questions. That is what any malevolent dictator does. So look at the Biden criminals. Look what they have done. They have cut off our freedom of speech. That's what a malevolent dictator does. And that's what any dictator would do. Any being, we don't have to even be related to them. This is a mechanism that happens, that evolves. There are some of those. And then there are others who are very pure. Okay? We have a very wide garden variety of different souls that are coming into existence in different forms, obviously. And some of them are very selfish and very brazen and very nervy, to say the least. So, and some of them wrote that, created this Old Testament. Testament. What are they testifying? They're testifying about themselves, how great they are. Yeah, that is what some of these dictators do. That's why we need to question that, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so those are not your gods, and your parents are also not your gods, and not your mini gods, and not your medium-sized gods either. They're also not your XXXXL gods, even if they have those clothes sizes, right? They're still not your gods. It doesn't matter how many carcasses they consume until they get a heart attack. They're still not God. And does a pure-minded God from outer space, an E.T., does he eat meat? Does he eat carcasses? No. I heard that Jesus Christ was not eating mammals, not eating birds. He ate fish. He came from a fisher family, and he was always teaching people how to fish, so they can get their own fishies, so that he doesn't have to always share his own catch with other people. But at that time, the oceans were healthy, and they had different, healthier fishing methods. But Jesus Christ was not the infinite cosmos purity. Okay, if he was, he would not kill a fish either. I just want to make this very crystal clear. He was good, but he wasn't that good. He wasn't on the level of Gautama Buddha. So when he was a young adept, as they call it. He was learning for Buddhist monks, and that's when his eyes opened, and he really understood. Oh, you can't kill any being. Then he wrote these things, and he helped Mary Magdalene, who was a homeless woman. He took her in. They became an unofficial couple. They were married. They had many children together. Those children were their disciples. Those were their very devoted disciples, because they were family. They had the order of the Essenes, and they were teaching philosophy and psychology. So they were very, very good scholars, these people, very good philosophers. They were on the learning path, and they knew they were on the learning path. They knew they weren't a completed product. And one is never completed, one is always expanding and learning. So, but the beings that had the soul, the pure soul of the infinite cosmos, they were just inherently wise at any age. It's phenomenal. Read the story about Jiddu Krishnamurti, how he was found by Annie Besant from the Theosophical Society. She was told, she had visions of this, that she would find what she called the Messiah. What is the Messiah? The messenger. The messenger vessel. The real pure messenger vessel is Gautama Buddha. And that's what Jiddu Krishnamurti was. It was one of his incarnations. It is phenomenal. Listen to what he says. He said, how can someone kill a baby seal in Newfoundland? How can a human being do something like this? He said, with that voice. He said, I want to cry. That's what he said, an old man said that. And the people he was be talking to, other philosophers and people and scholars. One guy was a Catholic. None of these people ever knew how to even respond to this, because that would come out of nowhere and unpredictable. Right? All of a sudden, ding, 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 they are caught with this message that they would rather not even think about. Yes, it's inconvenient, right? Inconvenient for them to think about this, the torture that is going on out there in Newfoundland on the ice. People with haka picks butchering up baby seals in front of their mothers that are literally crying. How can a human being do something like this? He said, I want to cry forever. I feel it. I feel this. I'm also the one that would go out there and I would take that baby seal and put him into safety. I would bring the mother and the baby to safety. I would do it if I was out there. I would intercept, and if they cut me up, then they cut me up. Very few people do it. Very few people go on that Sea Shepherd boat. Sea Shepherd has been stolen from Paul Watson now by infiltrators. He has his own boat, another boat, and has yet another organization. I hope that never gets corrupted. Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd have been corrupted by infiltrators. So he has the Paul Watson Foundation now and his own boat. And he goes out there and rescues and protects whales with their own bodies. And there are literally like less than 100 people in the whole world that would do this. That would risk their lives just for no other motive. Not for fame, not for money, not for anything. Not for praise. Just to protect the animals. Because it means that much to them. That's about 100 people in the whole world. Over 8 billion humans. Let's think about this for a moment. This is not a judgment. This is just putting things into perspective. Before people start saying that we are made in the image of a god or something. Also, where does that come from? We are made in the image. Which god are we made in their image? Maybe that Jehovah E.T., right? The crew commander of that E.T. spaceship that came down there. Well, I don't know. Well, it's 100,000 years ago. So, and that guy thought now he can be a god. Yeah, he was on the planet of the prehistoric ape humans. Okay. So that was his chance, to be a big shot. Because these ape humans, they weren't on that intellectual level yet. they weren't smart enough to create technology. They were literally in the Stone Ages. That was even pre-Neanderthal, I think. The jaw was even further forward. So the ETs, they actually painted those humans on rocks and slates and stuff like that. And there are some depictions of it, and they call them ape humans. Okay, I'm not showing you. So I look like from the morgue. I'm not sewing. I'm not sewing you together. I'm a little bit drunk on Purus Japonica. I drank a cup of Purus Japonica and rhododendron, and I dunked a towel, half of a towel, into that big soup bowl, and I dunked it all in together with the leaves of Purus and rhododendron, and I let it soak, and then I pulled it out, I wrung it out, the rest of the water, and I drank the tea after the towel was in it with some trace amounts of laundry detergent, and then I did a spa treatment, and I did like a full body scrub with that towel, and I felt so incredibly good. I really recommend that to people. Take flowers and garden clippings. You have lots of that, okay? You can fill a cook pot half up. You fill the rest up with water, make a real big, incredible bath out of that. And you boil it, you let it cool off until it has 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You take it into your bathtub, and you can do it there, or you can do it on the lawn. You put your towel in, just a hand towel or even half it, just like a washcloth. And you dip that in it, and then you can wash your whole body with that. And then you dip it in again several times and wash your whole body in. And then use the rest to pour over your head. And then wash your hair with that. And just leave it in like this. Don't rinse it. You don't even rinse it off, because the plants have medicinal power for your skin. So it feels incredibly good. Incredibly good. I highly recommend that to people to do. It's very, very, very medicinal. Very healing to do that. Also, it's a real good face scrub for the whole face and the ears, the hair also, the neck. The whole body feels really good on the back. When you get mites, you rub this essence onto your entire back. Feels incredibly. It opens up your pores. It feels incredibly good, and it's cheap to do. Everyone can do it. It's just the most amazing spa treatment in the whole world.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Be careful. Lock the door. Okay. So. That's good. Now he doesn't bother me now, so he's going shopping. Alright, baby dogs and I are still here. Okay. So I think this is, these things are food for thought to really get into, really think about. It's very, very important to think about all of this. Very, very, very infinitely important. So that you know where these stories are coming from. To me, this is obvious. This is crystal clear. It took me a while to get to this understanding, but I read different things. I don't stop at one thing. I read this, I read that. I read something that will be in opposition to the first. I read it all, okay? And I read more and more, and then I dig deeper, and I find out more, and then I put these puzzle pieces together. My brain does it, and then I'm starting to see the clear entire picture of this. Okay, it's obvious what's going on, and then they will carry that on for hundreds and hundreds of years. They will carry this from one generation to another, a lie, like these are our gods and we're in their image. Wait a minute, you don't even think about where this comes from? Why are we in their image? Why are we in their image? Is that good? Is that a good thing to look like them? Question these things. Is this good how we look? You decide for yourself, So I don't know. I never really liked the way I was looking. I thought my dog, my Great Dane, and the horse looked way better. So I question all of this. I question this existence. I think the human body isn't that. I don't find that so incredibly aesthetic. So I don't know. Not even the animation people. What is so incredibly? Why is that regarded as so superior? I don't see it. I see a horse or a dog much superior in appearance. Okay, if we want to do some Helmut Newton photography, then I would much rather photograph my dog or a horse. Why pick a human? Why pick an ape? What is less ape-like in us? Just because we stand up taller, we stand up straighter than the other primate? Is that making us superior? No. Okay. So the horses can jump much higher. The dog can run faster and have much better sense of smell. Horses and dogs are psychic, very intuitive. They're amazing beings. And they look amazing. And they smell amazing. I think the reason why I don't necessarily like the smell of armpit odor, including my own, is because they're too neurotic, and that growing up with humans and one dog and one rabbit, I saw the comparison, and this usually starts with their personality. So the dog and the rabbit, they were always nice. The people were not, okay? So naturally, the armpit odor is then associated with the people that are not so nice. They're very, very messed up. They're full of crap. Okay? And then I associate that with their smell. And then I feel bad that I am one of those with that same armpit odor. And then I feel bad that I'm not a horse or a dog or a rabbit, right? And then I feel like I want to become a Great Dane in my next lifetime. And I think I will. I was in my previous lifetime. I will be again in my next lifetime. I'll be an albino Great Dane with red eyes. A male albino Great Dane with red eyes. I don't know how I know this, but this is how I know. I know for sure. And I also was a male Great Dane in my previous lifetime. And then before that, I was a man. And I believe Friedrich Nietzsche. But I could be wrong, of course, but it just feels like it. I'm not gonna make a definite claim about this. That would be nuts, right? And someone said rightfully to me, yes, you guys, you always want to think that you have been some prominent person in your past lifetime, that makes you feel so great about yourself. She's right. I'm so spot on. There's a lot of people that are Jesus Christ. And they think that fraudulently, okay? So now this is tricky because Jesus Christ has come back now this time in over 6,000 people. A soul can have that many bodies, believe it or not. Okay? It's a little bit like an AI brain that can be put into thousands of different robots. They all have the same AI brain and also the same soul, of course. But there can be many people with the same soul. That happens. So someone said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes a lot of sense. But then there's a lot of fraudulent people that think that they are the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. So there are at least 5,000 of those fraudulent ones out there with traveling churches and stuff like that. They exist too. I love them all, they want to feel good about themselves and they don't know how to do it. that is their only way to figure this out. It's like, I must be Jesus Christ, because that counteracts my insecurities, and that's how they're thinking. Okay, that's how I might be thinking in regards to Friedrich Nietzsche. But I don't know. It just feels like I read a book, a novel about Friedrich Nietzsche. That's how I started to get into him, and the writer must have read a lot of Nietzsche's books, and including his autobiography Ecce Homo, which means look human. So, and this is Latin, and so that's the story about himself that he wrote. And so in this novel that these themes appeared, of course, of Nietzsche's struggle with almost ascetic health routines and cold water plunges, and taking this to some kind of extreme, almost self-flagellation, and the remorse and the regret at night, and the migraine headaches, and when I read that, I'm like, okay, now this feels eerily familiar. There is something there. So I got into Nietzsche. That was a long time ago. So I don't know when that was, when I started with this. It was, we were still on Green Avenue in LA when that started. I think in 2000 or some point. Even before Paul and I decided to get married. My mother sent me this book for Christmas, and I said, you guys sent me Friedrich Nietzsche's books now, I have to read all of them. So she sent me a few of them. Just the paperback versions, and the very cheap ones, because I didn't want to spend too much. I didn't want her to spend too much money on that, but I wanted to read them. And now I'm catching up with all of them now, because I'm getting them for free from Project Gutenberg, which is awesome. They are the best, those people. I give them 100 stars. Also, the people that have transcribed the books into ebook form, they are super, absolutely super, supreme. Those are real supreme scholars, those people. And those are real lovers of the antique books. And so you can get a lot of antique books for free. They're from Project Gutenberg. It's amazing. Obviously, you couldn't even get those on the Kindle from Amazon in the past, but I think he changed that later on. He got under fire for that, for not allowing that, because obviously he wants people to buy the books. But I'm never going to buy anything from Amazon again, ever. That is not a consumer-friendly company. That is a greed-based company, and Jeff Bezos is a corrupt criminal who causes Elon Musk lawsuits just to slow Elon Musk down, just to bother him, to take his attention off what he's actually doing. That's criminal, okay? That Jeff Bezos, I feel like going over there with a cheap cake, only a real cheap cake from like not even from the bakery of Safeway, but like a cheap Twinkie type of pre-packaged cake from the Dollar Tree store or something like this. I want to open that up, and then I want to go over to Jeff Bezos and like that, right into his face. And then I'll say bon appetit, peace out, and I'm gonna walk away. I got some issues with that person. But anyway. Oh man. It's better to laugh than to sit there with a grudge, right? It's much better. I have done that too. But anyway, okay, so these self-proclaimed gods, they were ETs, and there was a whole crew of people, and the father just declared himself as, I am your Jehovah now, I am your, and you are all of my witnesses. You witnessed my self-coronation. I think we should tell the Jehovah's Witnesses about that, right? I think it's about time that they started to learn about the history of this name, Jehovah. Okay. Who was Jehovah? An extraterrestrial who was a little bit full of himself, right? So that's what happened. And then you go on and create this cult out of it. And you're not even allowed to be friends with someone outside of the cult. No. That is pretty bad shit insane. That is what it is. I have to call the kid by the name. That is insanity. Yes. So, and the other religions, they aren't very good either. Matter of fact, is the Abrahamic religions are the absolute worst. Jehovah's Witnesses are some kind of side cousin that came out of the Abrahamic religions, which are based on this ET, this Yahweh or Jehovah. I don't know. There are different ETs with different names, and some of these ETs have different. They have several names, or names that were, or name interpretations or whatever, from different countries and different cultures. Could be the same, could be different ones, but this Bible God, that was an ET spaceship commander, okay, and he wanted to be the boss over everyone. And they also had power struggles among each other, of course, and that was going on. And then I believe that Isis which was a goddess from Egypt, depicted also in paintings, in pyramids, that this goddess Isis was one of the astronauts on the ET spaceship. So that was one of the ETs. And she was wiser than the males, much wiser. She was very, very good with people. She was very good. She was a ruler in Egypt for quite a long time, and people liked her because she cared about the ape humans, okay, and yeah, they did Garden Eden there, and this Garden Eden project, that was not just one, okay, that happened in many different places on Earth, wherever a spaceship landed, that happened. They all did the same thing, because they wanted workers that are smarter. They also wanted to be able to mate with them and have offspring naturally without gene splicing. So they had to start with the gene splicing first in order to make them compatible with them, in order to procreate from there and pass on the genes. And it worked. So I think there was a lot of trial and error going on. And they also did some gene splicing with animals, obviously, because we can see that in the depictions. And there are depictions of people that are literally half reptilian. Okay. Depictions that are 100,000 years old. Okay. Now you would want to ask the question, and you should ask the question, why? Okay. Why did they make these cave drawings and depictions and petroglyphs? Okay. Why did they do these? Why did they make these sculptures that are at least 100,000 years old, or maybe older? Okay, what's happening there? What happened there with those fish, with those reptile scales and so on? That some of these babies were born with a scaly face all the way to here, to the chest, and then it fizzled out into normal human skin. So what happened there? What was going on? Were those hybrids? Were those hybrid reptile humanoids? Okay, so, and it's very complex and wild. It's as wild as you cannot even imagine how wild it is. The history here on Earth. It is really wild. So there were remnants of the dinosaurs that have evolved here on Earth. The reptiles, okay, they evolved from a bipedal dinosaur. There were several bipedal dinosaurs that were very bird-like. And one of them had an extra large brain. And that one, most likely that one, evolved into a complete humanoid form. No, they started out with like a wing flaps, and then they became little arms, little hands. Right? Many of them had these little cripple hands and arms that were hanging almost limp on the side. They weren't even using it. They were just using the legs, kind of like an emo bird, or those are remnants also to today, or an ostrich. So they're actually related to those. Okay, and one of those evolved into a humanoid with a real large brain, not an ostrich brain. The brain really, really, really big, bigger than our brain that we have today. And I believe that the skulls from Paracas that they found that have a 30% larger brain, larger skull, the brain mass, indicating larger 20 or 30% larger brain mass than humans. I believe that those were the ancestor, those were the offspring of those reptiles, the original reptiles. Or maybe they were also hybrid, but I think that the original reptiles had twice the size of our brain. So they were doing gene splicing with humans. And I think the Paracas skulls are hybrids already between reptiles and humans. That's what I think. That's just making sense to me. There was a whole family living there, Paracas, Peru, and they had their specific burial there of that entire family. And then there were others, but they probably had the larger brain than the other people. So they're different concentrations of the reptile DNA and the ET DNA, different ETs. Okay, so we have different ETs in us, and we have Rapto in us. All of this, and it varies according to location. So it's obvious, but it has pretty much mixed itself out throughout the world population. But there are still variations of a concentration of this or this or this group in people. And the current DNA results, they don't point to that because they wouldn't even know how to identify that this is belonging to a reptile or this is belonging to an ET or a specific group of ETs. So they wouldn't even know how to do it. They would just say, oh yeah, this points towards the Middle Eastern, or this points towards an African, or this points towards the Nordic people. And I think the Nordic people have a very high concentration of Pleiadian ET in them. So that's where that comes from. That's where this look comes from. I believe it comes from those ETs. Also, this very narrow nose, a very, very, very pointy nose, and very light eyes, and light hair, light skin. Of course, that evolves also. It evolves in that direction as well. But then there are ETs that, and maybe this is maybe also has to do with quantum entanglement and synchronicities, that the very light skinned, tall, Nordic tall, as they call them, Nordic. So because in the Arctic Circle, that is where how a lot of people look like. The Hyperboreans, okay, and these ETs, maybe they have observed the prehistoric humans, and they have seen, oh, those prehistoric apes, they live closer to the Arctic Circle. They are light skinned, so let's mix with them and let's start there and go from there and create this Nordic race out of those. And then other ETs with darker skin, or with maybe, who knows what kind of skin colors they had. Some of them had blue skin, the ones that landed in India. Okay. And one of them was also commander of a spaceship, and his name was Lord Vishnu. Okay. And he was a blue ET, and they did the same there. They did another Garden Eden there as well, gene splicing, so that then they could colonize and they can procreate with the offspring of this gene experiment, with this hybrid ET and hybrid human. And those native ape humans that came from that region had much darker skin, because they had to have much darker skin in order to protect the skin from the sunlight. And that mixed with the blue skin of the blue ETs, and started to fizzle out, where you can't really pinpoint anymore, oh, is this an ET or human? But you can still see that some people in India have a bit of a bluish, like just a hint of a bluish color in it, in that type of pigmentation of darkness of the skin, so it's very interesting. how this has evolved and how this has been manipulated with through technology. And a lot of people, most people don't know that. Most people don't realize this. But I want to go back to the story of Abraham. Why I think this needs to be read with a highly critical mind. It's already over an hour now. I talk and talk and talk. I can just talk forever. So I want to wrap this up now. So I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you. Okay. So yeah, and then there were other landings that happened in Asia, in South Asia, and one in the jungle of the Amazon rainforest even. And the same thing happened again, this Garden Eden project. Over and over and over again. Happens many times. And so it just makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to explain all of these different races and particularly the stories that are connected to the races. They're word of mouth, of course, word of mouth storytelling of historic events. They get altered over time. Okay, that's obvious. But then some of these stories are engraved in stone, literally, in form of hieroglyphs and petroglyphs. Petroglyphic drawings and also clay figure sculptures that have been made a very long time ago. So and they sort of hold their place, okay, in regards to the storytelling. So they bring maybe a variation that happens over time through passing on stories. They bring it always back to ground towards the starting point, where they have to be reminded, oh, here is the sculpture that can tell us volumes of what happened there. Okay, so why does the sculpture have scales, okay, up to the chest? And what went on there, okay? Why did this baby have a light green, ghost green skin color? Okay, so where does that come from? Does it come from that dinosaur? Okay, does it come from this bipedal ostrich type of emu type of dinosaur cousin? Okay. And I think it just makes a lot of sense. And the arms eventually they grow longer again, because then the fingers the fingers, when they grow longer, then becomes useful and all of that. And they may not even they themselves may not have been gene spliced by ETs, or maybe they have, who knows. But they could have evolved, because they had a long time to evolve. The dinosaur era spanned across 150 million years. That is a long time for different species to evolve, much longer time than the human lineage had. And it would have taken the human lineage way longer to get from there to here. So if the Garden Eden had not happened, okay, the Garden Eden gene splicing project, many of them, many, and many of these pyramids were I think, actually ET spaceships that landed and never left again. And then it got sort of embedded into the earth, and merged with the earth and with the rocks and with the plants around it. A lot of them were spaceships, a lot of them were motherships. Some of them are Vimanas, which are like the single-person reconnaissance ships. And many of those are energy generators, such as the pyramids of Giza. They were created also by ETs with the help of gene-spliced people, with the help of giant gene-spliced people that were very, very large to be able to move large blocks of cement. Okay, they created cement. I believe that these blocks are not carved out of mountains. I believe that those are cement blocks that they have casted. Okay, and these pyramids, they looked very different in the very beginning. Okay, they actually had a very thick patina pasted on top of the already very, very polished cement slabs that were put together into this very, very slick and very smooth, straight surface on every side of it. And then there was a thick pattern of some material pasted on top that was actually white, that was deflecting the sun away. And then in the very top of the pyramid was a triangular shape that was probably a transparent stone or a glass dome type of, but triangular shaped. And that let sunlight in directly. And these sunbeams that came in, they went all the way down through the entire pyramid and deep down into a shaft of an underground, into an underground shaft. So it was a real long shaft all the way from the top of the pyramid. The sunbeams coming through, going all the way down at one particular time of the day. Okay. And it was kind of like a prisma. The top was also pyramid, of course. And then the sun, because they wanted to be able to harvest the sunlight at different times of the day and also at different points in the season. So it's not like a 4-season in Egypt, but it's sort of like subtropical, but it's more like LA, so more like Tijuana or Baja California. I think it's on the same latitude. But the sun is not always coming in from the same angle. So they wanted to harvest the sunlight while the sun is coming in from different angles, of course, to get maximum sunlight going down this shaft. And it would go all the way down into a basement, through the entire shaft that would go all the way into a deep basement, actually. I think there are several stories that go into the underground, under the pyramids. And on the very bottom, the very first floor that they have dug, when they first started to dig this out, they have this, what looks like a sarcophagus, but it's not a sarcophagus. It's a crystal container, very large crystal container. And in this crystal container was one of these golden arcs that they call the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so, but that ark is not some mysterious God instrument or some holy grail or whatever. It is it's a capacitor to harvest the sunlight and turn the sunlight into a storage, into energy storage. It was a battery of some sort, a capacitor to harvest the sunlight that would keep coming in and turn it into a storage of energy. It was an energy, high voltage energy storage device. That's what this Ark of the Covenant is. Okay, that's why it is all made out of gold, because gold apparently is able to harvest the sunlight and store electricity in it. And these were power grids. Those were the pyramids were power generators. That's what they were used for. And they were also used to supply the entire surrounding area with this energy through the air, actually, just as these experiments that were done by Nikola Tesla. He was getting very close to that technology himself, and he said that this information was fed to him actually from outer space. That's very interesting. Most people didn't believe it because he was just so 100% open to it. And he was also a mega genius to understand that these messages that came to him, they don't just send this information to any random person. The person has to be a total receptacle for that information, and has to also use that information then in a very wise way. I don't know how wise he was with this. I think he got very much carried away a lot of times with this, and he's done a lot of experimenting with it that the public was afraid of. So a lot of people were very afraid of this, what he was doing there, because he was starting to have entire towers that were sending out electric lightning and stuff like this, and that scared the public. And who knows what that would even do to the surrounding areas. That could even set a forest on fire. So he was kind of like a little boy in this way of experimenting with this and just getting really carried away with that, because he was so fascinated with this information that was given to him and that he was then using and able to use and able to put into action. And very, very few people would be able to do this. So, but what they did to him, he did not deserve. Okay, what Thomas Edison did to him was cruel and very unethical and criminal. They stole Tesla's technology and sold it as their own. They starved him, literally starved him to death, because they didn't want him to be declared as the owner of the technology, as the inventor, and because they wanted to have that monopoly over that, of course. So they killed him. It was absolutely horrific what they did to Nikola Tesla. I feel like I want to protect him. I feel like I want to go back in time and prevent all of these criminals from doing these terrible things to him. It's really tragic, very, very tragic what happened there. People need to be informed about all of this and not be hailing this Thomas Edison that was a criminal, and he stole technology from Nikola Tesla. He was a genius too, but he was much more like he was very business oriented, but in a very, very selfish way. So, and he was thinking about free electricity. That would give people too much power. Then he wouldn't be able to monopolize it and have power. So that's always how a corporatist thinks. Okay, a corporatist always wants to have power over other people so that they can exploit other people, so that they can enrich themselves and have power, have legislation over the public. Okay, and that's been going on for millions and millions of years, obviously. And then people speculate and say this type of personality of the pathological greed and the need for power over others, the very dualistic way of thinking, comes from the DNA of the reptile that we all have in us, but in different concentration. Okay, so some people have a much higher concentration of reptile, and then they end up maybe becoming someone like this who wants to be in the underworld overlord. Right? Someone like Bill Gates and George Soros, for example, or Benjamin Netanyahu, or I don't know him, but he seems to be very much on the take for the corporate agenda. And then a lot of other so-called Sumerians that are in the surrounding area of Israel, and don't think for a second that one is better than the other. Okay, so those are all reptile descendants, all of those. And some of them are very raw callous, and some of them are calculated callous. Some of them are fine-tuned callous, and they think farther into the future callous, and some of them are brutal callous and sadistic callous. And so you have a garden variety of callousness there. Okay. And that is the truth, and that comes from the reptile. That's what I think. So, yeah, and those reptiles, they don't have much respect for another life form, not even for their own family members. Seems like it's very sad. My nose is itching for some reason. I don't know why. By the very tip of my nose is itching so much. I'm not showing you. So. I have a lot of extra nose matter here in the tip. That's not even connected to a bone. So. Like an elephant. So, but anyway, it's good to laugh about yourself. It's good to be a clown, actually. It's very good. Good. It's good to be a clown. Okay? It's good to have humor. Not just humor about others, but about yourself. But it takes a lot of inwardness. It takes a lot of understanding the world. It takes a lot of humbleness and saying, oh, this is. It takes a lot of connection to your inner child. Okay, to allow yourself to be a clown and to allow that inner creativity and the humor, the universal humor, to allow that. It's very, very important. I'm getting grounded right now. It feels really good. I sleep so much better now that I'm getting grounded. I'm getting grounded through this amazing grounding band here. That I just have my face on it like this, and it's really working. It's amazing. I'm amazed. And that's connected to a cord. It's really good. And that's connected to this ground metal that's in the bathroom. It's really great. Fantastic. That's a pipe that actually goes all the way into the earth under the house. And Paul knows all about it because he's a handyman, and he's also studied electronics in college. He used to have a burglar alarm business, actually, in LA, long time ago. But he didn't pursue that too far. He should have, because he's really good at that. So, back to this story of Abraham. Abraham, this person, suddenly has this, this voice that speaks to him. It's supposed to be the God or whatever. And that's just a made-up story in order to do something with people's brains, to mess with people's brains. So what are they trying to get at when you read this story? What do they want you to think when you read this story and that says Abraham? And I don't even want to say what this voice said because it's so bad that I don't even want to repeat it. This God figure, this voice, whatever. That's not a God. That's a made-up story to manipulate the public. What is the story telling the world? That it's telling the world that you have to obey the Kabal no matter what, right? You have to do whatever this voice of this God in quotation marks wants from you, this overlord, this Jehovah commander of the ET spaceship. He wants you to do whatever he wants to do, okay? But this story, I think, was written later, probably, by other people that wanted to have power over the public. It's mind control. Okay, so this Abraham, here's a story that says, prove to me your face to me, your overlord or whatever. And then the voice says to him something horrible that I don't even want to repeat. But I have to talk about it because it has made people crazy and do something like this. So the voice says to Abraham, show me how much you are devoted to me by killing your son. Which is the worst thing that any overlord or dictator could possibly do to their people. And then Abraham was getting ready to sacrifice his only child, his baby, that is totally at the mercy to him. And then in the last moment the voice says, you don't have to do it now. You have already shown to me that you're that devoted to me, which is evil, okay? That's just an evil thing to ask someone to do, and it's an evil thing for someone to obey to such an evil overlord. And it is evil to even publish a story like this to the public in the name of such a religion, okay? Or in any form. It's evil to publish something like this because that is mind control. It manipulates people. It makes people think that they literally have to do anything that this overlord tells them to do, or the cabal, or the corporate agenda, or their doctor, or their pharmaceutical CEO, or the politician who says that you have to wear face masks when you can barely breathe, or whoever it is. Okay, so this is totally, this is an ancient and always perpetually serving the people that want to be served. Okay, and I say question this, stand up against it. Don't accept what someone else tells you. Don't accept what an overlord, whether appointed or elected, or anyone tells you, or your teacher or your parent. Don't accept this. Question it. Ask questions. That's exactly what the Bible tells people not to do. And the real, hardcore, fundamentalist Christians, they get mad if someone questions. They actually get mad because they have been drilled with that to such a degree. I'm sorry, baby dog. This is uncomfortable. I know. They have been drilled with this, okay? And for thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years when it comes to the Christian religion. Okay, and they don't dare to ask questions. They don't allow their children to ask them. This is evil. This is mind control that you perpetuate. It's not good. This is not helping anyone. So terrible things came out of this. There were many people, and I know of 2 cases that are absolutely horrific and evil and demonic and awful. 2 women that killed their children because of this evil mind control story. Okay, that's how far this goes. This is how far these kind of mind control, mind manipulation things are going. That's why that's a wake-up call. It made people schizophrenic. It made women kill their children because they have read this Abraham story over and over again, and they thought that they have to do the same in order to prove their faith to their overlord, to their God Jahwe or Jehovah or whatever name they have given that, their overlord. Okay. And the whole thing even started with just a selfish ET that wanted to have power over people. That's not the infinite cosmos. Okay, the infinite cosmos would never ask you ever to do something so horrific. It would never ask you to do any of these things. It would never ask you something that's unethical, ever. Okay, the infinite cosmos says, how can someone kill a baby seal? How can a human do something like this? That's the voice of the infinite cosmos. Okay, I just wanted to put these perspectives together. And the blue god agrees, right in this moment, said to me, 3333. Okay, and that's the truth, what I'm saying. These are not coincidences with the numbers. When I speak to you the truth here, the blue god responds with those numbers. Okay, and that's a fact. Okay, I have to wrap it up. The video is very long now. Okay, take care.